Good evening, everyone. I am your host and instructor, Laney Shaughnessy, and welcome to Spindle TV, your best source for CNC CAD/CAM training videos. Spindle TV is brought to you by Digital Woodcarver, inspiring your creativity and providing you with the tools to create your own unique masterpieces. Dadgummit. All right, I have voice now. Sorry about that. I didn't have any audio. No sound. I know. All right. So, welcome everybody. Let's start all over again. Do not adjust your computer screens. That is my camera that is blurry and fuzzy like that. You don't need to adjust your screens. That is me. That is me. I dropped my camera last week when I was rushing out to grab it from the shop. And I dropped it, and I don't know, I gotta fix it, I gotta do something, and I haven't had time. I just got back and just getting settled in and stuff today, and getting caught up with stuff over the weekend from the shows. Three more shows for the woodworking shows, and then I can kind of get back into working with you guys more full time. And everything, and get things underway a little bit better. I can get things running well, but we're gonna get off this screen here in a minute. So sorry about the blurry camera. I've beat the camera. I don't know what's wrong with it. I think I beat it up too much, and all that stuff. But I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me today, and we're gonna continue on with the joinery series. But I also, at the end, I want to kind of open it up for an open Q&A, just to get some questions and answers and things going and stuff, and just kind of move along. We're gonna probably skip a joinery series, and we'll do episode 3 and the following week or something. But this coming week, I want to do something a little bit different to kind of get away from joinery, because the joinery is kind of a little bit of an interlude or an introduction to the DWC joint making jig and stuff, and how we would set up these joints and stuff to work off the end of the table. But there are so many joints, so many things that we could do where we can actually do them on the table. I don't know if you guys have ever Google searched CNC wood joints or CNC joints as some keywords, and just saw some of the very cool joints that we could make for joining wood, where we're joining wood end to end, or half lapping, or what have you. A lot of neat things that we can do and stuff. So we're going to kind of get into that, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things, because I want to get a little bit away from the cookie cutter signs and stuff. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that we always cover the basics, no matter what, because we have new users that join us each week and things like that, and I don't want to get too advanced and all. I may end up in these titles and all, I might start putting, if it's an intermediate or beginning or an advanced course type of thing. But I want us to start building some projects where we actually have to carve out some parts and then we got to go over to our workbench and assemble these parts to create the final product. You know, I'd like to be able to do things, you know, some furniture pieces and things like that. I might revisit the rocking chair, you know, that a lot of you digital woodcarver customers made and stuff. But I want to get into, you know, some projects where we actually have to carve out the parts and put the project together, and kind of set the signs aside for a little bit and stuff. So we'll see what we can do there and all. I got a lot of things buzzing around in this head of mine to that I'd like to teach, but I want the whole purpose of these classes is to skill build, to get you each class should kind of bring you a little bit further in your skills, in the way you use your tools, in the way you design, and the things that you can do with your CNC. So that's what I want to do, and I want to make sure that the videos are progressing along as well, and we're not kind of just being stale and stagnant in one particular realm or area. I want to kind of mix it up a bit, and I want everybody to not be overwhelmed, but also at the same time not be sitting there going, okay, I know how to do this, let's get past it and let's go on to something better. You know what I mean? So we'll see what we can do there. All right. And Mike Smith, food evening to you too, sir. Hello, Tippy, hello, Floyd, and Dave, and Bob, and Steve, and Mary, Ronnie, Peter, everybody, welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight. All right, now, for those of you that are digital woodcarver customers, tonight and do I still have no sound? Totally, Jim, there should be sound now. Let's do a sound check. Test 1, 2, 3. Everyone that can hear me, raise your hand or say yes that you can hear me. And we'll see, Jim, if they can hear me, then I'm not sure what's happening. Hello, Donald. All right. For those of you that are digital woodcarver customers and have access to the digital woodcarver group, hopefully all of the digital woodcarver customers have access to the digital woodcarver owners group. Tonight, late this evening, I'm going to be doing a live video feed into the group to talk about the DWC quick set tool. I've saw a discussion going on where people are still trying to figure out the DWC quick set tool for setting your X, Y, and Z. How to use the tool automatically or manually, how to use the center hole finder and things like that. So in class, or not in class, but in the group tonight, you'll see that live video. And of course, if you're sleeping and not able to watch that live video, it will be inside the group video file section for you to watch. Okay? Because I want to cover some of those. I saw a long discussion and everything, and it's not as complicated as you may think. So it's pretty easy to straightforward, you know. Welcome, Jeff Peters. Welcome, Paul and Keith and George. Welcome, George. George, Buddy Rowe, thank you for joining me. At some point in time, George, we've got to schedule, me and you. Remember, I promised you a one-on-one coming on down to Punta Gorda to work with you and stuff. We got to set that up at some time. Monday, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays for the next 3 weeks would be the better days type of thing. But we need to get that done. I promised it to you, and I want to head on down there and work with you and stuff. So keep that in mind. All right. Before you head up north, right? You know, let's do it before you go to Maine. All right. What time? Tippy, what time? That's a good question. If class ends around 9 tonight, then it'll probably be directly after that. Quick, just however long it takes me to take out and go out and set up my camera and do the live feed and stuff. Get kind of a job set up and stuff. And so I would probably say within about 45 minutes or so after class, you know, at the maximum that I would be out there, or I'd be doing that live feed and stuff, somewhere around there. All right, let's jump on into things, and bear with me. All right, Jim, awesome. Jim's got sound. That's cool. Very cool, Jim. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, guys, give me 2 seconds to get some things switched around on my computer, and that way I can use both Pro or Aspire. And this, everything I'm doing is for Desktop Pro and Aspire. Well, not desktop. On the finger joint gadget, unfortunately, the desktop users don't have access to that gadget. But we'll look at the basic concepts and stuff, and we'll see how we can do that without the gadget, right? But give me a second, give me a moment. Let's talk amongst yourselves, and I'll just keep rambling on as I'm doing this. Let's go into there. So I hope everyone's had a good weekend. Like I said, I think I didn't have any sound when I said this, but three more shows. Atlanta, Chantilly, and Charlotte, North Carolina for the woodworking shows. We do shows all year, but they're more spread out than the woodworking shows. Those are every week. But after these 3 shows, it's kind of like, all right, I can get back full time to working with you guys and girls and be available, all day and all night and all that stuff on the weekends without having to be at a show and you can't get a hold of me and all those wonderful things. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that a lot. I like it a lot. All right, let me copy this and bear with me a second, guys. I'm almost done, guys and girls. Gadgets. 3 more shows. If I paste this. All right, that should have worked for what I just did, and you'll see what I just did in a moment. Let me go down and open up Vectric, and then we'll switch over and kind of get into it. Will you be at Atlanta or Charlotte? I will be at Atlanta and Charlotte, but I will not be at Chantilly. I will be broadcasting live from Ocala, Florida to the Chantilly show. I will be broadcasting live for the classes. I will be teaching those classes live at the Chantilly show, but I will not physically be there in person, but I will be at Atlanta and Charlotte. All right, let's go ahead and switch on over. Let's get off of my blurry camera here. And Bob, I would love to meet you in Chantilly. I will be live in Chantilly during the class, so we could absolutely meet kind of like, somewhat. I'll be on a 100-inch screen broadcasting live for the classes. I'll be teaching the classes in Chantilly, but I won't be there physically in person. Last year, the shows, they're a little tedious. I'm only home 2 days a week and then gone again type of thing. On the road and stuff, and so I took off Detroit this year, and Chantilly is the other show that I'm not going to be at, but I will be teaching live, so it's like me being there, but I won't be leaving Ocala, Florida. I'll be doing that live. All right, let's see here. Let's get on over where we're at. Right. Yeah, I got burnt out a little bit last year. I don't sleep much, as you all know. And then jet lag and traveling and everything, it wears down on the body. It makes you, I got all this gray hair now and stuff and all because of it. So I had to take 2 shows off this year. But I'm still doing them. It's like I'm just not physically flying to the shows. I'm still here. I'm still there live on a 100-inch big old screen projector and everything. Teaching all the classes. I'm just not physically going to that show. All right. We are in the Vectric software now. Now, when we're setting up a job to carve off the end, okay, basically when we set up the job to do finger joints or dovetails or anything like that, decorative joints, which you're going to see here in a little bit. We're going to do some decorative joints and all. But we're basically creating kind of an end view of the board. So if you can look at my little camera and everything, the end view of the board here is kind of what we're drawing right here. So this board is 3/4 of an inch thick, which would be 3/4 of an inch high, right? If you're looking at it in the camera right now, 3/4 of an inch high from the bottom to the top. And then the width, whatever the width is. And in my case, we're going to go with a, let's say we have a 5.5 inch board that is 3/4 inch high. And I'm going to go 2 inches thick So that way when I tilt this, when we're looking at the cut, we can see about 2 inches of the length of the board and everything, to kind of, so we can get a copy of that in view and type of things and everything. So now let's I'm going to work off the material surface for this, and we're going to touch off on or zero our X and Y out on the bottom left corner. And let's look at this in the perspective as if this was on our CNC machine. So I'm going to click OK so I can do some illustrative drawing. And I want you to, let's focus, let's get out of this white area here up into the gray area so you're not kind of focusing on that white area and stuff. Let's kind of come up here. And I'm going to draw out. So let's imagine that this is our tabletop here. And on our tabletop, we have our jig. And our jig is a 90-degree jig, blah, blah, blah. There we go. And on that jig, we're going to have a board, 3/4 inch board, clamped, you know, either vertically or horizontally. Either one. Now, if I'm doing, and let's kind of, so I can get into this, and let's say that this is my board here, and let's make it a little bit realistic. You know, it's 3/4 of an inch tall and stuff. And this one would be, if I was doing half blind dovetails, which we're going to talk about in another episode, but those two boards, that vertical board and the horizontal board, they would be butted. The horizontal board would be butted to the back of that vertical board, and they would be flush with each other at the top. Now, if I was doing these individually, you know, and I'm doing the fingers, joints, and stuff at the end and everything, then I'm going to, both boards are going to be vertical, and I'm going to be cutting both ends of them. But let's move this out of the way so you don't think that that's that. And on this board here, let's make this a little more realistic as a 3/4 inch board. Our router is coming down, and it's carving on the end of that board. And when we zero out, we're zeroing out, you know, our half of our bit and everything is getting zeroed out on that start corner. So now let's rotate this 90 degrees so we're facing that top and everything. And so if I were to draw that out, you know, I would be seeing something that looks about like this. Give me a second. Okay. And when I am, you know, when I'm working this way, this is my x-axis. So let's try to draw a line here. This is my x-axis heading in this direction. I'm going to try to draw an arrow. See how good I am. Spacebar to finish. All right, that's my x-axis. And, you know, we'll call this x. All right, look at that. Fancy old X right there. This is my x-axis and all. And this is my y, you know, going this way. And so if I were to rotate this piece here, let's get off of this. If I were to rotate this piece 90 degrees, like that. That bottom left corner right there that I'm wanting, that I just set my job up on, well, that's this inside corner. We're not going to zero out there. We're going to zero out here. Let me draw a circle where that's going to be. We're going to zero out here. Okay, our bit and all. So in our job setup, we want to be working off of this corner because this is the edge here. Oh, let me see. Oh, I wonder if I can do this. Oh, shoot. Don't do that. Don't ever hit cancel. Hit OK when you make changes. Hit OK. So if my board... I can't do that. The board's got to be rotated. Hold her tight. Hold her tight, hold her tight, hold her tight. I need to rotate my board. 0.75. And let's go 5.5. Okay. And when I have my job set up at the lower left corner, and here let's make this official and everything. Bear with me a minute. Bear with me. This will make sense in a second. Let me draw out kind of like we're looking from the top down now. So let's say if that was my jig, and let's say if this was my router bit, you know, that bottom left corner is represented by, in the board, when the board's actually clamped to the jig, you know, and this is my x-axis, x minus over here, x positive over here. It's the outside right corner. It's this corner here, you know, and everything. But in my job setup, you know, I'm going to set the job up exactly how you see it here. But when I'm drawing the finger joints, when I'm doing finger joints, we're doing finger joints first, I have to set it up this way, and then I have to rotate things 90 degrees and change the job setup. So you're going to see that in a minute. That's why I'm trying not to confuse you. So I'm going to go back to my 5.5 and my 0.75 in my job setup here. And let's get rid of all these other vectors. Because the joint jig, the finger joint jig, or gadget, not jig, the finger joint gadget that was made up by, oh, hold on a minute, I'll get his name. Stand by. Where's my 3.5 at? 3.5. Oh, I had everything nice and organized for you guys and girls. Stand by 1 second while I find my... Here it is. Okay. The finger joint gadget that was created... Oh my God. I want to give him good credit because he did a cool thing. Stand by. I had it all pulled up here. I moved that into Documents, Digital Wood Carver, 3.5. There we go. And that's my board. Stand by. I got to check my other computer here. Lord mercy lane. I had all of this perfectly laid out so I could give this gentleman the credit that he deserves. I want to call him Marshall, but I don't want to get the name wrong, so bear with me while I get his name. Mike, you're not late to the party. We're just having a discussion right now before we get into it and everything. And I want to give credit where credit is due. So give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, while I pull him up. Jerry. Oh, Laney. So much for being organized there, buddy Rowe. Matthew, I believe it is. Been a long day, folks. Give me 1 second here. I apologize. We're gonna move on past this. Dovetails. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. Matthew Bishop. Thank you very much. Sorry, it took a little bit to get that. Matthew Bishop, young gentleman that made a finger joint gadget for the Vectric software. And the gadget can be added right into the gadget library. And what it does is it helps lay out finger joints. Now, in order to use the gadget, the finger joint gadget, it has to, of course, be installed into the gadget folder on the computer. But when we open up the finger joint gadget tool, first of all, it needs to know some things. It needs to know, and hopefully this shows up on the screen, the number of interior pins. And so let's say that I want, on this 5.5-inch board, let's say I want 4 pins. And on my end pin width, the end pins, let's say that I want those end pins to be 0.625, 5/8 of an inch, on each end. The diameter of the bit that I'm going to be using is 1/4 of an inch. Now the clearance, I'm going to do a divided, meaning that it's going to create a divided job, so it cuts on one side, then it comes over and cuts on the other, so we don't have any tear out. If I did straight through, I have a tendency to tearing out or blowing out that board. I'm a big fan of the divided setup. And on the passover, you'll see that when it draws, when it draws out these vectors that it creates, you'll see how they overlap. It's the overlap of that divided pass and everything. And when I create these finger joints, that clearance, that 5 thousandths clearance, that is that kind of how much clearance I want for that fit. I need some type of clearance, or else they're going to be tight joints and everything. And so for me, my magic number with my allowance, my clearance allowance, my offset allowance, and all when I'm doing puzzle pieces is 5 thousandths, 0.005. It's kind of a magic number for me because it works for me. It gives me exactly the fit I want. Now, with this information typed in, when I create the finger joints, it's going to create what looks like to be a grid, right? It's going to look crazy. Now, you see how it threw the finger joints down here. That's because it's basing those finger joints off of my 0, 0. And if I'm looking at this in the setup of being turned 90 degrees, my 0, 0 is actually going to be here in this top corner. So if I take and close out of this and I delete these vectors and everything, and let's go in and come in here and set up my job to where I'm working off that top right corner, that's my 0, 0. When I do that finger joint gadget and with my parameters, and again, I'm going to change this to 4 pins. Everything else is going to be the same. And when I create those fingers, it will lay them out exactly how I want them to be. Now, this grid that you're seeing on the screen is actually 2 sets of vectors. So we have our socket board and our pin board. Pins and sockets, okay, with those finger joints. So let's turn off the pin board for right now. And now this will start to make some sense. Now you can see it and everything. Now this is a divided cut. So if we look at these vectors, okay, we look at these vectors and we look at this overlap here, we've got an overlap. So when that router bit comes in, and let me draw a router bit here. Let's go 0.25. When that router bit comes in, it's going to pocket out this half first down to here. And then it's going to do all that side. Then it's going to come back and it's going to come and do this side up to here. There's that overlap right there. So we get a nice clean overlap. Now, if I get rid of that circle there, and I turn that pin board off, you're going to see here's the socket board, the sockets we're looking at right now. And if I turn those off, those empty voids right here is what the pin board's going to be cut. So if I turn off the sockets and I turn the pins on, you'll see those pins. And if I were to turn them both on, you'll see this grid. And if we zoom in nice and tight, you will see that I have that 5/1000ths of an inch allowance for that fit. You know, that fit and everything. I have that fit and everything. So what we would do here is it's very simple. Once you create the finger joints and the vectors, you work with one at a time, of course. So we do our socket board here. And these vectors here, it's going to be a very simple pocket cut. Okay, we're going to do a pocket cut. And my board's 3/4 of an inch thick. I like to have a little bit of a hangover so I can sand flush and everything. So I'll probably go with maybe instead of a 0.75, possibly like a 0.76, 10/1000ths of an inch. That should be enough. Just a small amount. I just want a nice little hangover for sanding flush and everything. So let's go 0.76 here with a 1/4 inch end mill. Now currently my 1/4 inch end mill is taking 1/8 of an inch per pass, so it's going to take 6 passes. I could minimize that. I could come all the way down and have it take, since it's coming out from the side, I could have it take a full cut. But I like, I want it to make passes. I don't want to be aggressive with it. I want nice clean cuts and all. So I'll stick with that and everything. And so I'm just going to, this is going to be my sockets, right? So I'll just call this my sockets or socket board, however you want to do that. And I'll hit calculate. And the reason why I did a 2-inch board, so we could turn it sideways like this and you could kind of see this cut. So now on this cut, if we're looking at these vector lines, the bit's going to come down, it's going to do that first pocket and everything, and then it'll do the other side. So let's preview that cut. So it's going to go through down to that 3/4 of an inch deep on that one side. And then when it's finished with that side, it's going to come over and do the other side. Now, I've got my ends, I've got them at 5/8 of an inch on the end finger, so it's going to adjust based on my 5.5 inch board. It's going to adjust those pins accordingly. It's going to size them accordingly to give me my 4 pins, right, that I want, my 4 interior pins, should I say. Based on my number of pins and the outside width that I want to keep remaining on my outside cuts. In my case, I did 5/8 and 5/8, so it's going to space these interior pins accordingly and size them accordingly as well. And so that would be my pin board. All right. So now we would come over and we would turn off our, I'm sorry, that would be my socket board. I said pins and that was the wrong term, socket board. Now if I turn on my pins, my pin board, those are the interior ones. And once again, simply just let's make that active and let's select all of those and rinse and repeat. I'm going to go 0.76, 1/4 inch end mill, and I'm going to calculate that cut. Super easy. He did a great job, and once again, Matthew Bishop, wonderful job on that. Very simple creation of vectors to lay these parts out, where we have to do is put in what we want, create the, it separates it into 2 separate layers, select the layer we want to start with, and create that pocket cut. Super, super easy stuff. And now, for those of you that have not been online or know where to find this finger joint gadget, I will Matthew's got it open for the public. It's not something that it's free, open source. Basically, it's kind of open. He doesn't have it for sale. So I'm gonna be posting this gadget folder inside of the Digital Woodcarver Owners Group, and then for those of you that are not Digital Woodcarver owners, you could email me if you want this finger joint gadget. But you can also just type in the Matthew Bishop Vectric finger joint gadget on Google, and you can download it as well. But that would be my pin board there and everything. Those 4 interior pins and all. And there we go. Beautifully done. Very quick and simple. So I'd like to create and lay out and set this up before I got to recalculate these tool paths, because right now it's not set up for the Digital Woodcarver jig. It's set up, to be horizontally along the x-axis here, and we're going to be carving, that board's going to be clamped along the y, and everything. So I got to rotate everything 90 degrees. So I'm going to turn on both my pin and socket board here, so all of my vectors are on. I'm going to go into my job setup, and I'm going to change my measurements around. I'm going to change this to 0.75. I'm going to change this to 5.5. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to take my vectors, and I'm going to rotate them 90 degrees. And then I'm going to center them on my material. Okay. I want to make sure that my job is set up correctly. So we're going to go back into that job setup and change it to the bottom left corner, because I usually zero out on that bottom left corner there. Outside left corner, if you will, and all. And all I'm going to simply do is recalculate the tool paths. Okay? So for those of you that are going to be, and you would set this up accordingly to your machine now. On the Digital Woodcarver 2440 unit with the joint making jig attached to it, this is the steps that I would do. I have to create the kind of the finger joints and everything first, the pins and sockets first, and then I've got to go reorientate my job setup based on how my board is going to be clamped on my jig and stuff. And so that board would be clamped on the jig. So if I came out here, this board being 5.5 inches wide, if I came in here and drew my jig out, and if I had my table drawn out kind of deal, and my table of course is going to be back here because that jig is going to be hanging off my table type of thing, this board would be clamped vertically up and down. We're looking at a top view right now on my table and everything. So I have to orientate my board. I have to orientate my board appropriately. Okay. All right. So, any questions on that? Now, we have some questions. Tippy says, did you get the point wrong? Thought it would be at the top corner, not at the bottom left. Well, Tippy, hopefully I just explained that. When it's clamped onto the jig, okay, and let me get my jig up. My board is just kind of floating in the air. Let me get my jig up to my board here. Okay. When my board is clamped up to my jig, my 0, is the outside left corner when that board's orientated appropriately. Okay, and let's turn off the pins and sockets for a minute so you can, bear with me a second, I got to get my table and my jig. Let me move them to another layer. Tabletop view. Let's turn off those pin and socket board. So when my board is clamped on my jig, the outside left corner of that board is where I'm zeroing out the center of my bit. My bit will be centered out here. My 1/4 inch bit will be centered out here. Okay. So in the job setup, with this job setup now properly set up for my table and everything, that is considered the bottom left corner. Okay. All right. All right. X0, Y0. Any questions on that? Tippy, did that answer your question, or do you still have a question on that? On that. Any questions on that? So the finger joints, nice way. And of course, you would be creating these on both sides of the board, both ends, not sides, both ends of the board. So after one end was done, I'd be flipping this over and the other, and I do that for all of my boards. You've got 2 pin boards, 2 socket boards, and everything. And however you want to orientate those, that's up to you. Now you could also, you want to get, you got 2 pin boards, 2 socket boards. Let's leave it at that. I don't want to get too into it. Now, very straightforward, right? Nothing complicated about that at all, and everything. Now, if let's say if somebody says, hey, can I do finger joints on the flat table if I don't have the ability to carve off the front and all of that stuff? Unfortunately, I mean, we can, but we're gonna end up having dog bone fillets, that we have to deal with. So imagine if my board was clamped on my table, and imagine if I had my fingers, and let me create an array of fingers real quick. Oops, wrong button. Four rows, 1 column, space them, let's go a 1/2 inch apart. Okay, and let's center those on our board. So select them first, select that, group them and select that last, and center in there. All right, and then let's go in and excuse me, Lord have mercy, Laney. Let's go ahead and ungroup those, and let's do some trimming so we can kind of all right. So imagine if this was my board here. Well, to get that bit, when that bit is coming and cutting, and let's grab a 1/4 inch bit here. When that bit is coming down on the flat table, and it's coming around and it's cutting this out, well, we're going to end up with a radius here. Okay? We're going to end up with a radius here that we need to deal with and stuff, or else they're not going to fit together. We're going to have a rounded edge. So if when this was finished cutting, it would look about something like this. We'd have those rounded edges, and those 2 parts wouldn't fit together very well. So what we need to do is we've got to create a dog bone fillet that will give us a place for our bit to escape, our 1/4 inch bit to escape. We've got to create these dog bone fillets, so we still have a nice flat reference for our pins to fit into and all. But we've got to create that dog bone fillet if we're cutting it on the table. That way, man, Lord of mercy. That way, when that finger, and I don't know why I did that. I want to do this. That way, when those fingers and all come in and sit into this piece, I don't know how I ended up with a bigger, boop, there we go. They sit nice and flush in there, and we have a place. We don't have those radius. We have a place for where our bit escaped and everything. Okay, so we can cut finger joints and stuff on the table, but we have to use dog bone fillets you know, for those parts to fit together and everything. And so what we're going to end up seeing in our joint and all is we're going to end up seeing this kind of hole right here that's cut through and all. So we're going to see these fillets in our project and all. You know, we could fill them with, you know, putty or something like that. We could try to hide them and all, but you're not going to. You know, those are kind of they're a pretty good size. So, excuse me, man, I don't know what's going on with my throat. Bear with me a second, and I'll stop that. That's rude for me to be clearing my throat and stuff. Let's see. Let's go over to Jeff. Jeff has a question here. If you have the width on the front of your CNC, can there be two boards put in the clamp so you can do two sides at a time? Absolutely. 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 So what Jeff is asking is if there's enough width in my jig, which my jig, and let's get the jig sized properly. I believe it's 14 and a half. And let's get it positioned back where it belongs. Okay. So if what Jeff is asking is if I have enough space, can I do two boards, you know, side by side? Yeah, and what we need to do to draw that or to create that, Jeff, is we need to know the spacing between the two boards or if there's going to be spacing or not. Me personally, especially on the boards where there's wood here that's not getting milled away because I'm doing the pin board, not the socket board, I want a spacer in there. So I'd probably put like a 1/2 inch spacer block, you know, piece of MDF or something and all. So what we're going to do is we're going to size this job up appropriately, and on that height there, I'm going to say plus 5.5. Where was my mouse clicked? Like a goofball. Let me get here. 5.5 plus 5.5 plus 0.5. Oh, you son of a gun. Give me a second, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even know how to use my own keyboard. Plus 5.5. Jeez Louise. Plus 0.5 equals, all right, 11.5 inches. All right. And let's, hit OK and not cancel when you do that. Let's go 11.5. I know what it is now. I had to do the math on my table and all. All right, let's get everything centered to that as far as my jig is concerned. There we go. All right, so in the middle of my board is going to be a 1/2 inch spacer. And let's turn on our pins and sockets, both of them. Okay, let's get rid of that circle there. And I'm going to select those. I'm going to group those together. And I'm going to double click and I'm going to go down and hold my control key. And I'm going to snap them to the end of this. And then I'm going to move them relative to their position another on the Y, 1/2 inch up. Okay. And then I'll just simulate a, let's get out of the pin board. Let's go to the layer 1 here and make that active when I draw this. But let's simulate, we'll draw a 1/2 inch by 1 inch board there. Or 1/2 inch by 1 inch. 1/2 inch by 3/4. Okay. Oh, you son of a gun. All right. So now I've got this spacer here between these two and everything. And what I need to look at now is got a little bit more overhang here. Then I won't. Because you see that big old finger and that big old finger there? 5.5 plus 5.5 plus a half. Let me make sure I did my math right. 5.5 is 11. And 11.5. Right? 11.5. All right. And with that position there, I've got too much overhang. Why do I have too much overhang? Hold on a second there, guys and girls. I'm stumping myself. Stumping up. That's a 1/2 inch. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. 5.5. Let me pop that back down for a minute. Alright, so I should have that much overhang on both ends. And if I want another 5.5, that's a 5.5, 5.5 is 11. I want a 1/2 inch space in between that. That's 11.5 all day long. Right? 11.5 all day long, no matter how you slice and dice it. And why do I have that much overhang on this side? Riddle me that, ladies and gentlemen, if you will. Oh, I guess there's only one way to find out what that would look like. Let's go ahead and create the Toolpath and everything. You know what happens when you draw and you've got things the wrong layers active and all that stuff? It screws you up. So bear with me a second. Pins and sockets. Pins and sockets. All right. Jeff, yes, it can be done. You just need to know the space in between. But hold on a second. I've got a little bit of a dilemma here. Let me get rid of that circle. All right. So with my pins and sockets active here, I want to go into, let's turn off one at a time, and let's make the socket board active. I want to select that. And I'm going to hold down my control key and make a copy of that. Then I want to turn off my socket board, turn on my pin board, and make that active. Draw that. Make a copy of that. Holding down the control key. Okay. Now, when I turn both of those on, I've got to do some aligning up here. So if I take my sockets here, or my pins here, and I group those together up there, and I take my sockets and I group those together, I should now be able to take those two objects and align them to one another like that. And then I should be able to take both of those objects and move them down and snap them to here. And I'm not giving myself that 1/2 inch space. draw a 5.5 inch rectangle here, guys and girls. Bear with me a second. Oh, Lord have mercy, Laney. 5.5, it's been a long day. 5.75, this is making something. Jeff, you're making things complicated, man. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right, let me get this all centered up here. All right, copy or move to layer. Let me get that on layer 1 so it's not screwed up. And now with that, if I take these two objects here, select them first, select this object last, and center them on that object. Or not to material, to, center them on that object. There we go. There's my overhang and all. And what kind of spacing does that give me between here? And that's why, is because I got my overhang here and I was trying to make this edge of this vector at the end of that 1/2 inch, and it was throwing it a 1/2 inch up there. Gosh almighty, it was killing me. All right, well, how big is that spacer then? Let's find out. Let's go and snap a rectangle here. So it's going to be a little over 1/8 of an inch. If I want to put a spacer in there, I need to make a wider drawing area. But let's go ahead and let's recalculate our tool paths here. And we're going to do our socket board first. And on our socket board, we'll select all the vectors this time and not the rectangle there, and calculate. Let's come in here and turn our socket board off and our pin board on, and let's select all of those and calculate. And now we would be able to, you know, cut that out. And that space in between would be the space between your boards. So you got to make sure you get the right space when you get everything laid out. But yes, your boards are tippy. You're exactly right. Hey, buddy, I can start now. Thanks, Dave. It's good to see you, man. Tippy, you're exactly right. My boards were 5.5 inches, but my vectors were wider than that, and I needed to add. I needed to account for that. It was kicking my butt, but though, man, it was kicking my butt. All right. So now, this little spacer here, you have to use your imagination. This little spacer right here, that would be my space right there. So if I came in, you would not what is the term I'm trying to say? Let me get everything turned on here. Let's do a pocket cut on this. I'm going to go the full 2 inches. And let's go with a 1/16 inch end mill, just for kicks and giggles. And let's do it in one pass because it's not something that we're going to be actually cutting. This is just for preview purposes only. And calculate that out. Okay, just so I could separate those two boards for this preview. You know, that would be your spacer, your space. And then I would put a 1/2 inch in between, so I'd have to figure out exactly how long my drawing area needs to be. But yes, I could do both at the same time. Two boards at the same time. And I could do one would be pins and one would be sockets. So I could do, because I got 2 pin boards, I got 2 socket boards. So however you want to set it up, you can do. Hope that answers your question, Jeff. All right, man. That was highly complicated. Too complicated for what it is. This is not a complicated project in the slightest. Okay, in the slightest. This is the most simple type of thing, and Matthew Bishop has done a great job of making a very simple finger joint. Now, once again, we could do finger joints on the table. We just have to have our dog bone fillets, because when our parts fit together, they've got to, you know, fit together type of deal. You know what I mean? Let me burn. They've got to fit. And so we need a place for that bit to escape so we don't end up with radiused edges and all. All right, but yes, we could do finger joints on the table, on the flat table. For those of you that were going to ask that question, there's your answer. All right, let's talk about let's kind of get out of this. Any questions on dog bone or yeah, Jeff, sorry, it wasn't that great. I screwed up, but hopefully that answered your question. All right, let's take a look at something here. Let's go ahead and open up a second instance of the Vectric. And I want to open up an existing file. Oh. Let's go into my recents, because I was playing with this a moment ago. Let's take a look at another simple and sexy joint. All right. Now, this is like a little heart type joint. Now, if you guys and girls have ever seen this wonderful joinery system from MLCS Woodworking, they make a great jig. This doesn't by far does not take place of this jig and the things that you can do with it, but I want to use them as an example. All of these cute little decorative joints and everything, we can absolutely do wonderfully with the joint making jig, the joinery system from MLCS Woodworking. It's a phenomenal jig. I hope to own one day. I've wanted to buy one at the woodworking shows, but they didn't have them there this year. But I can simulate these on my CNC. So for right now, that's what I want to kind of talk about. There's some additional type of templates and things and all. So MLCS Woodworking, wonderful job. You did a great thing. You own a fabulous tool. You made a fabulous tool. But I'm just talking about CNC right now and the things that we can do with it. Got to give credit where credit is due, ladies and gentlemen. They're awesome people. There's nothing wrong with them at all. Nothing wrong with their joinery jig. I love it. I want one of my own in my shop. But I have a CNC and I do have the joint maker jig on the end of my CNC, so it gives me the opportunity to do it here as well. Okay, now on this joint here, it's very simple heart joint here. We're going to draw out the vectors, and we're going to draw out the vectors in 2 layers, and we'll talk about the job setup in a minute. We've got 2 layers. We've got a layer with just the design drawn out, which is a simple line vector. This is going to be for our profile cut. And then we have that vector closed off. We have that vector closed off. You know, it's a closed vector for the pocket cut that's going to create the pocket. Once again, we are looking from the top view. So if I was at the end of my table and I had this board was up against my joint making jig, and then of course my table, let's try that a little bit. Try that one again there, Junior. Hold on a second. And bear with me. I want this to be somewhat realistic in its drawing. All right, top view looking down at the table with that jig hanging, off the front of the table. This board here would be clamped to the end of it. Now, of course, I'm not drawn to scale on my table. You're thinking, man, that's a big old fat board. But if we look at the job setup here, now this setup, I'm going to set up this way. There's no need to rotate anything. When I draw these type of joints, it's going to get drawn out the way it should be, the way it's going to be orientated on my table. So 3/4 inches in width, that's how wide my board is by, in my case, I had a small little box I was making, and it was 2 5/8 inches in height. That's how long the board was, or how wide the board was. Sorry, not how long. And of course, I do 2 inches in height just for preview purposes only. Once again, we're touching off on the material surface, and we're touching off on that, or starting, zeroing out our X and Y datum on that outside bottom left corner. Now, with this, if we look at this joint here, and we can draw it out. You can draw out all kinds of funky joints. And stuff. But let's get rid of these vectors now that you kind of got a visual and all. We've got two cuts here. We've got a profile cut and a pocket cut. Now, of course, let's go on to our layers here. My pocket layer is going to be this bad boy that's visible right now. So let's call this my pocket cut vectors. And let's turn those off, and let's turn this one on and make it active, and we'll rename this one, and this will be my profile cut vectors. Now here's the kicker, guys and girls. You got to keep something in mind. The profile cut vector is being cut on the board that is laying horizontally. So let me draw this out so you understand what I mean. Let's say that this box and all was yay big, right? Okay. So when this profile, this board is hanging over the front end of the table, and when that bit comes, and we need an 1/8 inch diameter bit. I'm using an 1/8 inch diameter bit on this, not the quarter. When that bit comes and it cuts out this profile cut, and it follows along here and it cuts out this profile and stuff, it is cutting away this end. This whole end of the board is going to be gone. Okay, it's 3/4 of an inch deep cut. It's going to cut that end of the board off. It's going to be fall right off. Fall right off. When I'm doing the pocket cut, that is going to be on the vertical board. The vertical board, cutting that pocket out. So let's take a look and see how this would look if I were doing this cut. All right, so on the pocket cut, let's go into our preview here. We'll do the pocket cut first. My bit's going to travel back and forth, and it's going to take out this pocket to whatever depth that I need to cut. And of course, I need to cut the thickness of my material. In this case, my material for this job was, most likely going to be a 3/4 of an inch thick. I believe that my boards were and everything. So this pocket is going to cut out to 3/4 of an inch deep, and I'm using an 1/8 inch end mill. This is a perfect size or perfect opportunity to use your 1/8 inch end mill for something very cool. Let's see here, Ronnie. Everything is blurry on the screen. Ronnie Probert, everything is blurry on the screen. Most likely my camera's blurry, Ronnie. That's not your computer screen. That's my camera. I dropped the camera last week. As far as the buttons over on the left and everything, most likely those are blurry as well because they're small and everything. But the actual cut of the screen shouldn't be. So if you're referring to my camera being blurry and those buttons, yes, sir, you're correct. All right. So let's tilt this like we were looking at it in the end. So I've got my vertical board that would be clamped on my table, and this nice little, joints would be cut in there. Almost like a half-blind dovetail, right, with hearts. A half-blind dovetail with hearts or dog bones, whatever you want to call them. So we've got that. All right. And then if we preview the other cut here. Now I'm going to make this cut, the cut depth is going to be 3/4. Understand this. It is going to be 3/4 because that's how thick my board is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my job setup a bit, and I'm going to make this a 3/4 inch board for the moment. Okay. And I don't want to recalculate the toolpath. I just want to preview that profile cut. All right. So let's preview that. Now that profile cut, that bit's going to come around. It's going to cut, and it's going to cut down. It's going to cut down. It's going to cut down. And then that piece on the end is going to fall off. Bloop. Fall to the ground, whatever, wherever it's going to fall. Yeah, my camera, I dropped it, buddy bro. My camera is blurry. All right. And, so this piece is going to get, it's going to fall off. And that's going to leave me with the end of my board. And, of course, my board is going to be however long my box is and all. You're just seeing, kind of a cut-off view of it. And that bad boy is going to be the, the pins that fit into the sockets of that joint to create a nice joint. And, again, once again, using an 1/8 inch bit. So, keeping that in mind, again, drawing out a very simple vector. We lay it out and we draw it out. We have a profile and then we have a pocket. The pocket cut, the vector is closed off. A little bit of overhang. Give yourself a little bit of overhang so that bit gives you nice clean edges and stuff on these three sides here. But the pocket bit is closed off. The profile bit is just a single line vector. Follow that profile, single line vector and everything to create that receiving, you know, pins, tails and pins, or sockets and pins, however you want to do it. But the profile cut is cut on the horizontal board, pocket cut on the vertical board. All right, and knowing that and keeping that in mind and everything, then we can really do some pretty cool looking, we can make up some pretty cool looking joints, and we can get some of the results that you know, the guys and girls that use the MLCS woodworking joinery system use. Once again, wonderful joinery system, nothing wrong with it, but I'm just trying to give you some ideas and some wonderful things. MLCS woodworking.com, check them out. If you have a router table, that is an awesome jig to use, you know, so got to give credit where credit is due. All right, but thinking, you know, visualize all these joints, you know, and things and everything. Eagle America is phenomenal. That's their fast precision joint system and all. But visualize these joints and then create them, type of deal. We can do anything, you know. All right. Alrighty. Now, let's go ahead and let's draw out one of these joints, and let's see here. Let me turn this off, and let's create a new layer. Now I'm going to keep in mind that I have I'm going to do a, I'll just call it new joint right now. I don't even know what it's going to be right at this second. New joint profile, and create another new layer. Call this new joint pocket. All right, let's start with the profile cut, and then we'll close off the vector for the pocket cut. So with that active, we'll go ahead and start drawing in here. Now, on this profile cut, I always tend to kind of start out with either a line or a rectangle or whatever the shape may be. And in this case, I like to use a rectangle because I like to visualize where my two pieces are going to come together. You know, because my joint, you know, when it comes in, all this stuff is getting, you know, going to be wood and all. So I kind of like to start with a rectangle, and then I will cut the vector free from these other three sides and stuff. So on here, I've got basically this rectangle here split down the middle and everything on my board, and let's close this. You know, I've got this pretty much split and centered right there on my board. And from there, you know, I got to figure out what kind of joint that I want to make. And let's say that I was doing a let's do kind of a lollipop type joint. So I'm going to get started here. And let's go with a... Let's go with a 3/16 diameter, 0.1875. All right, and let's move this over to here. Now on this, I'm going to take and I'm going to hold down my control key, and I would like to have 4 of these, and it doesn't matter where they're at or positioned at the moment because I'm going to be spacing them evenly. 1, 2, that one's a duplicate. 3, 4, and let's get rid of that one. 4. All right, on these 4 right here, I'm going to use my rectangle as a boundary. I'm going to select those 4 first, and I'm going to select that boundary last. And I'm going to come into my alignment tool and I'm going to align them, you know, center. And then I'm going to space them vertically. This button right here inside that last vector, I'm going to space them evenly. And then I'm going to come in and throw them on the outside edge here. Okay. All right. Now I've got to keep in mind that I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch end mill to when I come in and cut this and everything. So I'm going to need an 1/8 inch radius here. And so what I can do is I can come in and let's see if I do some triminy. Let's see if this works. I'm going to go with a polyline tool and I'm going to click. Nope, wrong tool, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to create a 1/8 inch 0.25 point. Learn how to type there, Laney. 1/8 inch diameter circle, and imagine if you will, I can't even imagine that one. Let's trim this up. Let's go ahead and trim this up. I'm going to take my 4 circles here. I'm going to give myself a slight overlap. I'm going to bump them over just slightly. And I'm going to use my trim tool, and let's get rid of that there. That's going to be the smartest way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, on my corners here, notice where I trimmed and everything. If I come over and close this, it should close those vectors, bring those corners together like that. Now I can come into my fillet tool. And if it's a radius, so it's going to be a 1/16 inch radius for that. And it's not going to let me do it. I can see that already. And it's not going to let me do it because, let's see if my vectors they're closed. Oh, are you not going to let me do it, you son of a gun? I really want to use tangents here. I wonder if my arc tool works with tangents. Bear with me a second. No. It doesn't. I know my polyline tool does. Or if I was working with arcs. Hold on. There's a secret to this. Oh, it's not gonna let me do it on there. Alright. Oh, so much for on the fly type of stuff. Okay, let's go in here and let's grab this. Now, am I in the wrong tool? I am in the wrong tool, you stupid butthead. Arc tool, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go 1, 2, and on this here, should have our 90 degree. Overshot it. I overshot it, ladies and gentlemen. 1, 2, and I want to snap to there. Okay. Now, holy camole. All this for all that. All right, now I'm going to come in and I'm going to snap to this node here and draw a line straight across. And I'm going to, while I got the line tool open, I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of them. Straight across. I'm finding my center point here. Straight across. Spacebar to finish. Alright, just making sure. I kept seeing people pop in. Alright, we got people popping in. That's wonderful. Alright, now with this item here, I'm going to select that arc and then my line here, and I'm going to go into my mirror tool, and I'm going to flip it about that line to the other side. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here, But before I do, I'm gonna borrow this boy. So let's grab him and let's snap that line there. All right, I'm gonna hold down my, double click on this, hold down my control key, and I'm gonna grab right on the end of this line right here, and I'm gonna hold down my control key and I'm gonna drag a copy down. And with that, I'm gonna drag it, and let me zoom out. Lord have mercy, Laney. I'm all over the place tonight, guys. And I'm gonna snap it right there to that line, and then I'm gonna, with my mirror tool, select here. Oops. Hold your shift key down when you're selecting more than one. I'm going to flip about the line, get that over there. We're rocking with some peanut butter now. Might as well take this one and hold down the control key and grab that and snap over to here. Select my line, flip about the line. Doesn't matter what direction we flip, it's going to flip about that line. Let's grab this guy here, hold down the control key, drag a copy down here, and once again select that line and flip about the line. Alright, let's go ahead and do some trimming. I don't need this, I don't need that, I don't need that, don't need this, this, or this, this, or this. Okay, probably should have made my circles bigger, but that's all right. You'll get the idea. All right, so we've got this here now. Now let's go into node editing mode. And before we go into node editing mode, let's join these vectors. Okay, now notice I've still got 6 open. That means that when I trimmed, I created an overlap for myself right there. And so what I need to do is I need to come in here and I need to trim away that overlap, but not the rest of my vector. Okay, I just had a little bit of an overlap. I only have to trim once and then close the tool, because it's set to rejoin the sections automatically when the form is closed. So if I trim this here and I close this, it should snap those together. You see that? All right, let's come over here. We've got, if we did it on one, we've done them on it all. So let's trim this overhang. If we close the tool, it'll snap that together. Open and close, open and close. I wish there was a way to do it without opening and closing, but it's all right. Let's go down to the next one. Oh, I passed the next one up. Scissors, trim, close, snap. Come on down to the other side. Scissors, trim. I could probably just go through and trim and then close everything at once, right, if I was smart. Let's go down here and, all right, I believe I'm good there. I believe I'm good. So when I close this, they should all done. I didn't have to open and close, open and close. If I would have thought about it just a second, I could have just sat there and trimmed them all and then closed it one time and it would have rejoined them. So now I have one closed vector, right? Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. All right, let's go ahead and make a copy of this. We're gonna go ahead and make a copy of this to the new joint pocket layer as well. And on the new joint pocket layer, we'll turn that off for a moment because right now I'm working on the profile. And on the profile, what I want to do is I want to go into node editing mode, and I want to simply cut the vector here on this end and on the other end. Okay. Now, when I cut the vector, that means I want to delete this other end right here, these 3 sides. But I don't want my router bit starting right on the edge. I want my bit having to start off before it comes in and cuts. So what I want to do is I want to come into node editing, and I'm just going to bring this out a bit. Okay, about a 1/16 of an inch. Same thing on this side. Let's bring this node out about a 1/16 of an inch, not a little more. and that's going to be my profile vector. Now, on my, let's turn that off, and let's turn this one on. Let's go ahead and just delete that because I'm jumping ahead. Let's go back to there and let's make a copy of this bad boy right here. Copy, get out of node editing. Copy to a layer, and let's go to that pocket layer. And now with that pocket layer, all I have to do is close this off. So I'm going to use my polyline tool, and I'm just going to come over here, and I just want to go past my board a bit. Come on down, and I want to snap to this to wake that vector up so I know where to go to, and then I can come up and snap there and spacebar to finish. Alright, so now I've got my pocket, I've got my profile. So let's go ahead and let's do the pocket cut first since we're in here. And let's go ahead and create a new pocket cut, 3/4 inch board. So that pocket cut is going to be 0.75, and this is going to be my pocket cut. I'll call it a lollipop, L-O-L-L-I-P-O-P. And calculate that. We got to select the vector first. Laney. Terrible teacher. Now, I got an open vector because when I joined that, I didn't join it. I just drew the line all the way around. I got to join that. So that join open vectors is on the edit object tool here. And we got 2 open vectors. After we click join, after joining, we'll have 1 closed. That's what we want. All right. So with that, same parameters. Now on this end mill, let's go ahead and change back to our 1/8 inch end mill proper and calculate this pocket cut. Let's reset this preview and preview this toolpath. And while that is previewing out, any questions on anything so far, and how many of you have I just confused the heck out of with my being all over the place tonight? Alright, now here's the idiotic part of me. I'm going to stop this right there. It didn't work. Let's reset this preview. I want this I'm resetting the preview so I can go back to like a 2-inch thick so we can kind of get a simulation of what this would look like on the job size. I want that board to be 2 inches thick, and let's preview that again now. Alright, any questions, ladies and gentlemen, on anything CNC related? Because we're about to go into, and as far as the joints, really kind of consider like it's a half lap joint, or not a half lap, I'm sorry, but it's a it is a half blind dovetail, if you will, right? But not the dovetail joint itself. We can use hearts, we can create all kinds of things. We could do, you know, I don't know, we could do little dog heads if we wanted to, or something silly and stupid, whatever you want. This would be my, you know, socket side here, right? Or actually, this would be the pin side because it's pinning, trapping, it's pinning the tails in a sense. So that would be that. And then, of course, if we come in and let's create the profile toolpath. This time I'm going to cut down to 3/4 of an inch and calculate that. And that was stupid, Laney. Let's actually create it and calculate it on the actual vector that it should be calculated on, which is the profile vector, ladies and gentlemen. Let's calculate that. Now let's reset this preview, and now I'm going to go back in now, and I'm going to change my job setup again to a 3/4 inch board. I'm changing this job setup because I want to, it's an end look. We're kind of looking at the end, so I want you to be able to see kind of what you're getting. All right, now that, my ladies and gentlemen, friends of all places, we're stopping that before that gets too ugly. When I created that profile cut, I created it with a 3/8 inch dovetail bit, and it's supposed to be my 1/8 inch end mill. And I want to be on the outside of the line. Not sure how those parameters got in there, but let's do that one more time. And let's make this look like what it's supposed to look like. Oh, Lord have mercy. Now, on this joint here, I've got just a little bit of an undercut to where they would actually get trapped in there, right? If I would have put that arc anywhere else, I wouldn't have a good type joint that locks in together, right? But I've got just enough undercut that it will lock that in and everything, and then of course the glue and all that stuff. But be mindful of that too, you know, how those things lock together. If this would have come out just a little bit more, if that arc would have come out a little bit more, then these would have just slipped in together and they would have slipped apart type of thing. They wouldn't, you know, it would be glue that's holding them together. There'd be no mechanical hold at all. But so that would be the end of my board, and you're not seeing the whole length of it. But this is the horizontal board, laying flat on the table that's getting cut off. And then we have our vertical board, which would be the pins pinning the horizontal board, the tails of it, if you will. All right, there's going to be two more joints that we're going to do. We're going to do a bridle joint, and we're going to do a mortise and tenon. Okay, two very simple joints. And then if you got questions, throw them out there. All right, and I stopped that early just so you could see, because I didn't want it to cut away all of the wood, but you know, that would be the vertical board, but it would be much cleaner than that one. All right, let's get over here and let's talk about a tenon, or a dual tenon, or a triple tenon, or all these type of tenons and all. Let's get this guideline out of the way here. Let's look at our job setup, and on this board, let's go ahead and go with a little bit wider board here. And let's say that my board is going to be 3.5 inches, and again 3/4 of an inch thick, and we'll go ahead and make this 2 inches just for visual purposes only. All right, so let's start off. Now, on this 3/4 inch board, I'm going to have a 3/8 of an inch tenon, 0.375. And I'd like to have some meat on each side of this tenon and everything. So on this 3 inch, let's go 2.5. Click apply. Now I need to center this on my material. Let's center this on the material. So we're going to go ahead and align center to the material. And this is going to be my tenon cutting on the end of the board. Now on this tenon, I'm going to be removing all of this waste wood around it. And when that bit cuts around and everything, I need a radius here, because when the socket, the mortise, you know, on this tenon, the mortise, when that bit gets cut, it's not going to be square corners. They're going to be rounded and everything. So what I need to do is, depending on what bit I'm using, I need to add a fillet. Let's say that I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. That's going to be an 1/8 inch radius, and I need to add that radius to this tenon. Okay, so it'll fit into the mortise. Now for this, I'm going to draw another rectangle, and I'm going to draw this rectangle the size of my board, and I am going to oversize it. So on the width, we're going to go about 0.875, and on the height, we're going to go try that again. 1 inch. Does not need to be that high on the height, so let's go 3.125. Or how about 3.625 because my board is 3.5, like an idiot. There we go. All right, so this is gonna, for this tenon, it's gonna be a pocket cut. Now the pocket, however deep I want, however deep my mortise is gonna be is how deep my tenon is gonna be. And if I was doing kind of a flat face, so imagine if I was taking a board here, and imagine that this is my board from the side view, and I'm doing a mortise and tenon joint with a little bit of an overlap for, you know, maybe a recessed piece of glass or something like that, then my tenon is going to be fitting into my mortise. And if this board is 3/4 of an inch thick, my tenons are usually about 3/8 of an inch. So that means my mortise is 3/8 of an inch deep and my tenon is 3/8 of an inch tall and things. Now, that means I'm going to do a pocket cut on these two vectors here. Always close your tool when you're done using it. I'm going to go with a pocket cut of 3/8 of an inch deep, and I'm going to use my 1/4 inch end mill to cut this, and it's going to be an offset cut. Round and round we go, around and round we go. We're going to preview this cut and everything. Now, it's going to do it, should do it in 3 or 4 passes. Hey, Kevin. Welcome. All right. So I've got my 3/8 of an inch tenon. That would be cut on the vertical board, right? The vertical board on the Digital Woodcarver's Joint Maker jig. We'd simply cut that out. Now on the mortise, you know, I would cut that mortise on the horizontal board, horizontal part of the table. And so let's say that on that, this board is going to be fitting across there. So I'm going to utilize this vector, and I don't need this one. And let's imagine this board is laying horizontally. Okay. Now what I've got to determine is I might not want this mortise, you know, I may want it back here some. Remember I said I'm going to have a piece of glass? So I'm going to have to change up my job size just a little bit so I can accommodate for that. All right. So what I mean by that is, let's say that I have that this is going to recess, and I'm going to have you know, let's say that I have a 1/4 inch piece of glass that's going to be sitting on this tabletop or something, or whatever it might be in this frame. Then, you know, that 1/4 inch piece of glass is going to be, you know, sitting in this area. My mortise is not going to be there. It's going to be out here in this field a little bit. So I've got to change my job size up a bit for this. And on that width, you know, I've got to make my board a little bit wider. So I'm going to go for demonstration purposes only. I'm going to go 2 inches. Dadgummit. Always hit OK. Never cancel. And let's get rid of all these other vectors. I think you're gonna, I don't want to confuse you. Let's get rid of these vectors here and this vector here. All right, so now my mortise, of course, is going to be, you know, positioned back. And what I would normally do is I'd take a guideline, I'd right-click on that guideline, and I'd make a relative guide to itself, the thickness of the glass or whatever it is, where I need this mortise positioned and stuff. But we got to add in that 3/8. So remember, this is a 3/8 inch tenon. My board is 3/4. Okay, so that means I have 3/16 on one side, 3/16 on another. So my 1/4 inch, my 0.25, I've got to add in, I got to be sure that I add in that, you know, 3/16. Okay, hit equals. And we're going to create that guide relative to its position. Okay. And that's where the edge of my tenon is going to go. And once again, that would be a pocket cut. So let's draw out real quick. Let's draw out the actual board for a moment. 3/4 inches wide. And let's center it real quick in position. Okay. Now, if I would have cut that tenon on that board, if I would have left that tenon position right where it's at and everything, you know, that's my guideline where I want my tenon, but let's make sure that I have my 1/4 inch here. This is where the edge of my board is going to go when they get connected together. So what do I got here? Do I have a 1/4 inch? Yes, I do. So that would be my glass and everything there. So that would be perfect. So with that, we take and create a pocket cut, 3/8 inch deep, 1/4 inch end mill. Calculate that to create that mortise for that tenon. Okay. Mortise and tenons, you know, basically a pocket cut for the horizontal board and a pocket cut for the vertical board. And with the vertical board, we need 2 vectors. The outside vector with a little bit of an overhang, so the bit cleans up all the edges, all 4 edges. Then the inside vector is going to be where the tenon is. And then for the mortise, we just need 1 vector, which is the mortise cut. And we generally use the same vector for both. But now, I missed one very important thing. Allowance. If I tried to fit that tenon into that mortise, oh my goodness, it's going to be crazy. So we're going to give the pocket cut for the mortise a little bit of an allowance. Now, I always cut the tenon first so I can test fit my joint, my mortise, so I can test fit. And if I need to give myself a little more allowance, I can just simply open up that allowance some more and run that toolpath again to clean it up and stuff. But we're going to go with a negative. For me, I'm going to give it a 0.005 allowance to start. And then if my fit is still too tight and everything, then I'm going to make that allowance, 0.01. I'll slowly go up until I get that perfect fit, that nice fit where I can hold that board where they hold together when I'm holding them in the air with no glue, and they don't come apart. But I don't have a nice pressure fit, friction fit. I don't want a whole lot of slop there. So if we were to look at this 2D view here, in the solid view, what that 5/1000 allowance does is it just opens up that mortise just ever so much so that tenon can just slip right on in there. Got room for glue and things. All right, and that's a negative allowance, a negative number. Okay, we're going over the line negatively. All right, if that was a positive number, it'd be going away from the line in the positive direction, inward. Okay, all right. Now, so mortise and tenon, once again, finger joints, decorative dovetails, drawing those vectors out, and mortise and tenon, all very simple, easy joints. I could even do, if I wanted to, let's go back to a 3/4 inch wide board here. 3/4 inch wide. And let's turn off this toolpath. I could start to get jiggy with it, and let's say that I wanted to F9 to center on my material. Let's say I wanted to thin up these tenon a bit and do a dual tenon on this 1-inch board. So my tenon, let's go with my size here, and I could do a dual tenon in 2 different ways. I could do a dual tenon that is vertical, and that was the wrong way to do that, guys and girls. Let's size this appropriately. Let's get rid of that. I want to start off with a rectangle because I still, no matter what, I still got to put my radius in there. All right, let's get these sized up. So they're going to be, once again, I'm going to do a 3/8 inch. And we'll go 1 1/4. And 3/8 inch, go into the size here, 0.375 by 1 1/4. And I'm going to take both of these guys and girls right here, and I'm going to select this rectangle last, this outer boundary last. And I'm going to go into my alignment tool, and I'm going to center them, and then I'm going to space them vertically. And then on my outer rectangle here, I'm going to offset that outward a small amount. I'll go 1/8 of an inch. That'll be fine. And offset that. And if I were to take and create a pocket cut on this 3/8 of an inch deep and calculate, reset that preview and preview that selected toolpath. That would be my mortises. Nice and pretty there. Now on my tenons, stand by. That should have been, ooh, isn't that mysterious? Hold on a minute. Got to make my tenons, so I got to do my radiuses, so my fillets on the 4 corners, using that 1/4 inch end mill. Alright, on this guy right here, with him selected and with these two selected, do my pocket cut, 3/8 of an inch deep, offset, calculate, reset the preview and preview that selected toolpath. This will be my dual tenons. I could double them up, you know, I could do 4 tenons, I could do, you know, however you want to do. I mean, you can get creative with it, but, you know. And then the final joint that we're going to do is the bridle joint. And this is going to be cut with both boards vertically. And, you know, and I'll draw out what a bridle joint looks like and all, but that would be my dual tenons. Right, for my joinery. And once again, on the pocket cut for the mortises, there would be an allowance. And I'm going to start off with a -0.005, you know, and on that allowance, let's turn off this outside vector and calculate that. Now, isn't that just the strangest bird in the world? Ah. Oh. Had that vector right there selected. I was wondering what in the world is all that about. There we go. All right. So there'd be our mortises and all with that 5/1000 of an inch allowance and that perfect joint. Now, of course, this would be done most likely in a horizontal board, unless I was doing it on the end of the board to extend something. I don't know, you know. But usually it would be done on the horizontal board. That would be clamped on the table. And, yeah, so do some nice framing. All right, let's talk about last joint of the night is going to be the bridle joint. Let's get rid of these guidelines so that they're not so confusing being sitting there. All right, a bridle joint. Let's see if we can draw this out so you know what a bridle joint is. Let's draw out a box here. And let's kind of get somewhat centered here. And let's trim away. Okay. All right. Now, on the bridle joint, typically a frame, let's see if I can draw this sideways. If we were looking at it from a side view, we'd have a tenon on the end, and then we'd have our frame, and this tenon on the end would actually go all the way up to there. All right, so imagine if I was looking at this view here from this board here, looking at it from the side, so I'm not seeing that joint and everything. But if I turn it sideways, we'd be looking at it through here, and the end of this board here, would be, you know, fitting down into here, you know, but it would be flush. Okay. So a bridle joint, great for framing and things. All right, so let's go ahead and very simple one to draw out here. Now, on we'll do the tenon first. Okay. Now on the tenon, we're typically going to be, you know, starting from one edge, and I'll do a 3/8 of an inch. So let's go a height of, or a width of 3/8. No. I want to go a little bit thinner. Let's see, I'd like to have a good quarter on this 3/4 inch board. So let's go 0.25 inches. And then on the height, let's say that my board is 3 inches. We'll go 2 3/8 or 2 inches, whatever. It doesn't have to be that big. You know, whatever it might be. And let's get that up here. Okay. Then on our, let's get it centered on our material. There we go. And then on our rectangle here, our outside for this pocket cut, I'm going to snap it to here. And I'm going to offset this rectangle outward 1/8 of an inch. I don't need sharp corners, offset outward. There we go. And with those two guys selected like that, let's go ahead and again, it'd be a pocket cut. I'll go 3, actually on this one, if my board is 3 inches wide, then this bridle joint, see my frame mostly, let's say that my frame bear with me. I normally wouldn't put a frame together with a 3 inch wide board, but let's say that's fine. Let's say it is. Then my cut depth on this is going to be 3 inches. I don't think I'd have a bit that would stick out that far, so let's we'll narrow this one down to about, let's say our maximum cut will go 2 inches, right? We'll go 2 inches. And reset that preview. Now, on this, before let's change this job size here. Let's go, okay. And let's preview this. And guess what I didn't do? I didn't put radiuses. Let's stop that for a minute. That's poor form on my part. I need, if I'm going to be using my 1/4 inch bit, I I need my fillets here so those joints fit together. No. No. On this one, there are no radiuses because I'm getting a square flat cut from this one. So I was right the first time. All right, let's preview that again. This was going to be fitting down into the bottom of that pocket, so no radius is needed for this one. Straight cut. So let it preview out. Should have done it in one pass. Let's do this. Let's turn this view. Setting my passes to 2 passes for preview purposes only, ladies and gentlemen. Preview purposes only. Do not set this for 2 passes when you're actually cutting it. Okay. So this would be my, board. It would be extended out rail style. Is it rails? Oh God, hold on a second. Oh, I'm about to get dumb here. Let's see here. The rail. This would be my rail board. Going across top, my rail board. And it's going to be sitting down into the style board. Okay. Rail style is what we're about to cut next. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this my rail board vectors. And we're about to wrap it up. Rail board vectors. And I'm going to take these selected vectors here and I'm going to move them to that layer. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and this will be my style board vectors. And with that active, I'm going to go ahead and take this and copy it to that layer. Now, oops, turn that off. Make sure this is active. Let's turn that one off as well. All right, now on this one's going to be going the full length of that board, and we're gonna pass it up a little bit. We're gonna go by it a little bit so the bit gives us a nice clean cut on the inside. Now this is only 1/4 of an inch, okay, and there's going to be a slight allowance and everything, so it should let me, if I'm using my 1/4 inch bit, it should let me make this cut. Otherwise I'm going to have to make it a little bit wider, but it should, with my allowance and everything, it should let me make this cut. And bear with me a second, I need to know how deep to cut it. And this bad boy right here is 2 3/8 inches tall. So that's going to be my pocket cut, 2.375. 1/4 inch end mill. I'm going to just, for preview purposes only, you would set your number of passes accordingly for your cut accordingly. I'm going to set this for 2 passes for preview purposes only, for time's sake and everything. And with the allowance, I'm going to go ahead and put in my -0.005 allowance. And let's see if this allows me to calculate. It will. Reset this preview. Okay. And let me make sure I had the right vector selected. I did. And did I give myself enough overhang? I did on that side. And not on that side. You see that radius starting to come in? I need a clean cut. So let's open that back up and let's pull this vector down a little bit. I'm going to hold down my shift key so it pulls it down in both directions a little. There we go. And simply recalculate that. I want that nice straight. I don't want any radius in there, you know, on that board and all. All right, let's go ahead and let's go into 3D mode. Let's change my job setup a bit. 3 inches looks good. And let's preview this cut. Preview. Okay. That would be the cut for the style. And the rail would fit right in there. And you would have a bridle joint. If we could pull up, if I pull up a here, and I call this a bridle joint, and we go into images. Okay. Woodcraft image. Way to go, Woodcraft, on that photography. Got to give credit where credit is due if I'm going to be showing their pictures. But we have that nice bridle joint frame and everything, you know. Here's another look at it. Woodcraft again. And then here's old Wikipedia's image. That's a smaller one. Way to go, Wikipedia. Screw me right up on that one. Jeez Louise. And we could get fancy and do these bridle miter joints. A mitered bridle joint. Absolutely could do that as well. Nice job there, joint venture with Western Joinery. But yeah, so that is a bridle joint. And again, pocket cuts, you know, create that nice bridle joint for those picture frames and everything. Now, once I got the joinery cut and everything, I could then take this over to take all 4 of my pieces over to my CNC table. I can clamp them down and I can carve some decorative carvings on them. You know, whatever I wanted this frame to have in there. I'm just using the joint making jig for the joints. Right? We're still going to be carving, you know, some kind of design on these frames or something, unless we're just doing plain boards and all. And these, of course, can be made on a table saw and all that wonderful stuff, router table and all, but we're going to do them with our CNC. All right? What you have to be mindful of is you do not have a whole lot of depth of cut. Now, this is 2 3/8. That would mean I would have to have a good sized bit that would be able to reach down to that. You know, I got to have an extended bit or something to get down there, because most bits are only 3 inches in length. You know, and if I had that bit, you know, 3/4 up into my collet or something, that's only giving me 2 1/4, right? And I got 2 3/8 here, so either an extended bit or you're working with thinner material for your framing if you're going to use that joint maker jig. You got to keep that in mind, guys and girls. If you go trying to create something you can't get it, you're going to bottom out and all that stuff. Okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 9:18. We're going to wrap up here in 2 minutes. So any questions on bridle joints, decorative joints, finger joints, mortise and tenons? Very simple. Pocket cuts and profile cuts. Most all the joints are pocket cuts, except for the lollipop, which is the decorative joints profile cut, and the first one we did, the heart. Those are profile cuts. You got a profile cut on that. But the rest of them are all pocket cuts. Pretty straightforward. Just a few vectors. All right, did I put everybody to sleep tonight? Bore you to death? Now we're going to take this to the next level. When we do our Joinery Series 3, it's not going to be showing you joints and stuff. We're going to build something utilizing these joints. Okay, we're actually going to make a project, start to finish, an entire project that is going to require, in one form or another, one of these joints. Whether it be a jewelry box, whether it be a, you know, some type of keepsake, a frame, or what have you, we're going to actually make a project. I will let you know what that project is as I come up with it. I'm going to go start designing it and everything. But hope you paid attention for the last 2 episodes, because in one form or another we're going to create a project that incorporates these joints. It's test time. No, I'm just kidding. No test. I'm just going to show you how to make it. All right, everybody. I don't see any questions popping up, so I'm going to give it just a few more minutes, and then we're going to say our farewells and good nights for the evening. And I got to get into a, hold on a second. We're going to have to give it a few more minutes because I need that, thumbnail image. So I got to, let me make a cut here real quick. Let's see, what size is my board here? 3 inches. That's good. All right, let's preview this Toolpath. We'll make the heart one real quick. Change our board size to 2.5. Oh, why do I always hit cancel? I don't know why I always hit cancel. 2 5/8. Thanks, Laney. You're welcome, Mike. You're welcome, Ronnie. Just something to think about. I mean, now you guys and girls know. I mean, we're not ignorant to the fact that, you know, we could DIY a jig to hold our material horizontally or vertically if our table had the ability to cut off the end of the table and everything. But I would love for you, if you have that ability, if you have a digital wood carver 2440, the dovetail, or not, I keep saying the dovetail, but the joint making jig is on the website for sale. And if you're CNC, if you're not a digital wood carver customer, you don't own a digital wood carver, and your CNC has the ability to carve over the front edge of the table, you know, you could order it as well. Got to keep that in mind. All right, so let's go ahead and let me find that perfect picture. We'll go with that. And we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank each and every one of you for sitting in on this. And I know, you know, some of these classes, there's not a whole lot to them and all, but these small steps, these small simple things, going to lead into bigger things. And that's what I want to do next week. We're going to get away from the simple joinery and all. We're going to make a project. And not next week, I'm sorry, the week after. Next week, I'm going to do something completely different. We're going to get away from the joinery series for right now. 2 in a row is good. We're going to do something completely different next week. I'll announce what that is coming up. But the following week, we're going to come back to episode 3 for the joinery series. But we're actually going to make something. Start to finish, all of the parts, lid, sides, bottom, whatever it is that needs to be made. We're going to draw up and design. And we're going to create the toolpaths and stuff for it. So stay tuned for that one. It's going to be a full project video and all. All right. All right, Tippy. I will see you guys on Facebook in the Facebook group. For those of you that are in the Digital Carver Owners Facebook group, I will see you in just a few minutes to talk about the DWC Quickset zeroing tool and how to use it and all, how to set it up and use it. And until then, until next time, I'll see you soon. I want to thank you for joining us tonight on Spindle TV, your best source for CNC CAD/CAM training videos. If you're watching Spindle TV on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. You can find out more information about our training and products by visiting us at www.digitalwoodcarver.com.